that I have about the documentary, it was just old news, and they took a couple of with the footage from Puff from the days that's leading up him to get arrested, the incidents with the people from the courts, the two people from the courts. So it was nothing new.
They used to work together years ago. Now there is nothing left between them except pure hostility. No friendship, no respect, just a long-running rivalry that has turned deeply personal. And this time, 50 Cent is not taking shots for entertainment. He is aiming to hit where it actually hurts. When people started asking why he was going this hard now, 50's answer was simple. He believes Diddy has been allowed to move unchecked for far too long, and that the moment for accountability has finally arrived. That belief is what pushed this conflict into a completely different territory. Then the story took a turn nobody expected. The footage at the center of this controversy was never meant to see the light of day. People close to the situation say it was considered too explosive, too risky, and too dangerous to ever be released publicly. But somewhere between a betrayal inside Diddy's own circle and 50's patience finally running out, the one recording that was supposed to stay buried surfaced online. When it dropped, it didn't just trend, it detonated.
They once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially.
December 1st, 2025 marked the moment everything shifted. By then, the man once considered the most powerful figure in hip-hop was no longer controlling the game. He was watching the narrative flip against him from a prison television. And that detail is what people keep coming back to. Diddy didn't just lose a headline. He lost the one thing he could never afford to lose: control of the story. According to reports, Diddy's legal team tried to intervene before the documentary premiered.
He said he's speaking out because he believes Diddy's a predator. He wants accountability, and he doesn't want someone like this to run unchecked.
Allegedly attempting to persuade Netflix not to move forward with the release. They argued that the project was essentially propaganda, executive produced with 50 Cent's fingerprints all over it. Netflix responded by stating that 50 did not have creative control over the final cut. Then, the night before the premiere, Diddy's side reportedly escalated matters by issuing a cease and desist. They claimed the entire project relied on stolen footage and private recordings that were never intended for public viewing. But those recordings are exactly what changed the temperature of the conversation. The docuseries presents footage of Diddy in the days leading up to his September 2024 arrest. Instead of confidence, viewers see him ranting, pacing, panicking, and demanding loyalty from people who were already backing away. The irony is hard to ignore. The cameras meant to protect his image appear to have captured the moments that damaged it the most.
Out in front of this and, tried to persuade Netflix not to come forward with it. I think it's an interesting argument because what they're claiming is, Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, has had a long-standing, animosity against Diddy and sort of vice versa. And because he's at the helm, they're arguing this can't be taken seriously. This should sort of be seen as propaganda. And one of the things that Netflix hit back with was, yes, he's the executive producer. He doesn't necessarily have creative control. And that's something
viewers watch him pacing inside a hotel suite, snapping at people around him, barking at lawyers, and speaking like someone desperately trying to contain problems before they explode. The tone is not calm. It's pressure. It's panic. It sounds like someone realizing the walls are closing in. Even the brand begins to feel different. Bad Boy stops sounding like marketing and starts sounding like a warning.
Put his hands on females, put his hands on producers, executives. That's just his. I guess that's what the whole name Bad Boy comes from. That people don't really understand. What is it? What is a bad boy? Why did he choose that name? He never really gave a clear definition of how he feels about it.
Once the clip spread, audiences locked onto a moment that seemed small but said everything. Diddy is seen smiling for fans, then immediately recoiling and asking for hand sanitizer, reacting as if the crowd was beneath him. Polished charm in public, visible disgust the second the cameras shift. That contrast is what made many people say this wasn't a misunderstanding. It felt like confirmation, not just of allegations, but of behavior patterns that people claimed had existed for years. Netflix responded by stating the footage was obtained legally, that all rights were secured, and that the source would remain protected. Director Alexandria Stapleton added another sharp point, suggesting that Diddy spent decades filming himself, building a personal archive, without realizing he was documenting his own downfall. He wanted the world to see behind the scenes. Now the world is behind the scenes, without his permission. When Netflix initially reached out for comment, Diddy's camp reportedly stayed quiet. But once the premiere aired, the tone shifted fast. Lawyers became loud, aggressive, and urgent. By then, though, the narrative had already changed. The conversation was no longer about whether the allegations were real. It became about how much had been hidden for years. Even people who once defended him began saying the footage didn't feel shocking. It felt like missing pieces finally clicking into place. But in December 2024, Oberle made a claim that completely shifted the angle of the story. He stated that he did not leak anything himself.
Look at how many people he affected negatively. That was his trade-off to gain what he had. His former bodyguard, Gene Deal, said he seen him doing a ritual where they dug. What is that? And I feel like it's being overlooked because they see him doing the dance moves with the baggy clothes. You know, some of the ladies in his videos.
Instead, he alleged that someone inside Diddy's inner circle covered for him for 3 days while Diddy was out of state. During that brief window, the footage was taken. 3 days was all it took. Just enough time for someone to see an opportunity. Whether the motivation was money, revenge, or pure chaos, the result was the same. The most damaging material ended up in the hands of 50's camp.
Collect everybody's phone. So now it's just your word against a billionaire. You're gonna lose. Read this right.
Oberle's side framed it as a betrayal of trust. Online, many people called it karma. And then the documentary positioned that moment as the final turning point. The docuseries presents a clip that it claims silenced the last remaining doubts. In that moment, Diddy is allegedly seen or heard pressuring someone close to him after showing them an explicit party video, using the threat of exposure as leverage. The tone presented is not flirtation. It lands as control through fear.
Where Diddy said to her, she testified that he showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm going to put this video out. I'm going to send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified to that.
If the jury
believed her, yeah, that's coercion.
That is why the public conversation pivoted to a single word: coercion. The series argues that if courts accept accounts like Cassie's, moments like this would not be isolated incidents. They would represent evidence of a pattern. And the documentary does not stop with a single clip. It widens the frame to the environment that surrounded Diddy for years. It revisits the infamous white parties, invite-only nights that looked glamorous from the outside, with A-list names floating through the orbit like it was the Oscars of excess. Then it contrasts that image with what neighbors and locals allegedly experienced: repeated complaints, police calls, and reports of guests wandering outside at dawn, appearing dazed and disoriented. From there, the documentary connects the party culture to lawsuits that piled up over time. It references allegations from different eras, including claims involving a minor in the late 1990s.
Book Porter allegedly recounts discovering and making copies of the tapes that Diddy made of himself having with young boys that he was managing, including an alleged tape involving an 18-year-old pop.
A security guard who said he was drugged and assaulted in the mid-2000s, and a former adult performer who claimed she was groomed through multiple events. The series keeps reinforcing one core message. This is not random behavior, it is systemic. It highlights how many people were allegedly affected and frames that harm as the cost of maintaining power. Former bodyguard Gene Deal is referenced, claiming he witnessed ritual-like behavior that many dismissed because of how Diddy was publicly framed: dancing, fashion-forward, larger than life, while darker behavior was allegedly ignored. As celebrities reacted, the divide grew louder. Ja Rule criticized 50 and accused him of dry snitching. Marlon Wayans warned about karma, only to be pulled back into the conversation when 50 reposted older footage connecting him to the party scene. Joe Budden took a harder stance, arguing that the documentary is not just about Diddy. According to that framing, the real subject is the system that protected him: labels, lawyers, executives, artists, and insiders who benefited while the money kept flowing. And that is where the conversation becomes dangerous, because it stops being about one man. It becomes about an entire machine. Empires built on silence only survive as long as the people inside them stay quiet. And right now, that silence is gone. The dam is not just cracking, it is collapsing. Whispers turn into testimony. Rumors turn into lawsuits. People who stayed quiet for years begin speaking publicly, voices shaking but steady enough to be heard. The more they talk, the clearer the picture becomes. This does not look like a single downfall. It looks like a system being exposed. And systems do not run on emotion. They run on money. That is where the story moves next, into the power plays behind the curtain. Because this web of silence was never just personal. It was financial. It was leverage. It is about careers, brands, and bank accounts. That is why Kim Porter's 2018 passing keeps getting pulled back into the conversation. Officially, her death was ruled natural causes by Los Angeles County, but the internet never stopped whispering. The documentary leans into that tension, suggesting that what Kim may have known and what she may have had access to could explain why her name resurfaces every time this story explodes again. At the same time, the legal pressure continues to stack. Lawsuits are piling up. Former employees, producers, and people tied to the inner circle are now fighting publicly over what they claim happened and what they believe they are owed. What was once handled quietly through non-disclosure agreements and behind-the-scenes settlements is now being described as open legal warfare. In the public conversation, these cases are no longer framed only as justice. Many see them as payback. When an empire starts to crumble, everyone who stayed silent suddenly remembers what they saw. Everyone who played along wants distance. Everyone who felt used wants their version of the truth on record. The timing stands out. The docuseries drops, and suddenly voices that were silent for years start speaking. That does not feel random. It feels like survival. People rewriting their roles, flipping loyalties, and trying to land on the right side of history before the door fully slams shut. What really has people uneasy is not only what has already been shown, but what has not been shown yet. If the clips that surfaced are this damaging, people keep asking what is still buried. The documentary suggests Diddy has been filming obsessively since he was 19. Every party, every meeting, every private moment, an archive. If even part of that is true, the question is no longer whether tapes exist. A tape is not just a scandal. A tape is leverage. That is why the pressure feels different now. Allegations describe videos being used as threats, as tools of control, and as a way to force compliance. According to claims repeated online, Kim Porter allegedly discovered and made copies of recordings that were never meant to surface. So the question becomes how far people will go to keep those recordings hidden, how much money will be offered for silence, and what happens when someone decides the price of silence is no longer worth it. Power only lasts as long as people are willing to enforce it. And right now, Diddy's inner circle does not just look fractured. It looks like it is turning on itself. Former security figures have spoken emotionally, suggesting this was never about one man alone. They describe something larger, a network where responsibility is shared. And when people who were paid to protect you start talking like that, it makes others wonder what those without contracts or loyalty left are about to reveal. Then come the workers, assistants, road managers, staff who were present but never visible. Artists who left Bad Boy with stories they were too afraid to tell until now. That is the real shift. The documentary might end, but the reckoning does not. If anything, it opens the door. The biggest question hanging in the air is simple: who is next? Diddy did not build this world alone. The white parties were not private playgrounds. They were industry events involving too many people, too many careers, and too many silent agreements. So when federal authorities raided properties connected to him in 2024, the same question echoed everywhere. What else was found? What names were in those files? How many powerful people are watching closely, hoping their past never becomes tomorrow's headline? Because this story was never only about one man. It is about a system built on untouchable fame and unchecked power. An era where rules were written by people who believed consequences were for someone else. That era now looks unstable. So where does that leave us? A mogul behind bars, a family still pushing denial, an industry holding its breath, footage that reshapes how people remember the past, and the belief that more exists, recordings that could burn whatever is left of that legacy to the ground. Artists who once praised him now act like they barely knew him. Fans look back at the music they grew up on and wonder how much of it was built on something darker than they ever wanted to admit. This documentary gave some answers, but it left much bigger questions. What happens when the last loyalist flips? When the final NDA expires? When the next tape drops? Because many believe more is coming. And if this much surfaced while he still had influence, imagine what could surface now that he does not. So let me ask you this. How deep do you think this really goes? Are we watching the fall of one man or the unraveling of an entire system built on silence and control? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure you hit like, subscribe, share, and support Drama and Brief. We're just getting started. I'll catch you in the next one.